Well, hey, everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Conversations. Today, we're going to be talking about 5 lies that we believe about building leaders, specifically about church. Because let's be honest, most church leaders would never say these 5 things out loud. I'm going to be honest, not a lot of people would say these things, but we all think them. Oftentimes, we operate from them. We build leadership pipelines around them. And today, I'm just going to call out 5 lies that are quietly sabotaging how you and I raise leaders in church. These aren't just bad strategies, they're unspoken assumptions that lead to burnout, dysfunction, and shallow leadership. If you've ever found yourself frustrated with your team, constantly putting out fires, or wondering why it feels like no one is truly getting it, this episode is for you. It's time to confront the lies and build leaders the way Jesus actually did. So jumping in, 1 out of 5, number 1 is I just need someone to do the job. This is what you're really thinking, and this is what I've thought in my life. I don't really care if they're called, healthy, or aligned. I just need warm bodies to get stuff done. You can't use the word task doer. You can't live in a life of building people who just get things done for you. A lot of times, what this sounds like is delegation. What this sounds like is empowerment. Hey, I'm delegating this to you to get this done. And a lot of times, again, 80% healthy, 20% not, still unhealthy. You can't have that. You have to have pure motives, because the lie is function matters more than formation. Using people to meet needs creates a volunteer culture, not a leadership culture. Eventually, it breaks both the people and the ministry. I've been in contexts or had conversations with people who they've got their staff and they got the volunteers. The volunteers, the ones who show up at Tuesday at 4 p.m. to help with the food pantry, or on Sundays, they're the greeters or the ushers. What you'll see is there's such a huge gap or separation between the volunteers and the staff. And to be honest, it's just not healthy. It's not vibrant. There's usually not alignment. You got to focus on having the right people in leadership, the right people on the bus. Yes, anybody can serve if they follow Jesus. Honestly, following Jesus that's the instant response, is generosity and serving and following him. The lie is, I just need someone to do the job. No, you don't. You don't need anything. God's given you everything you need to continue the assignment that he called you to. So don't use people. Number 2, if they're talented, I'll figure the rest out later. A lot of times this is in the context of church planning. We love just putting people in positions or putting people in leadership because we just got to fill roles. This is what church planning is. False. That's not true. Because what you're really thinking is, if they can sing, speak, or execute, I'll tolerate their attitude, flakiness, or immaturity. You and I know this. You teach what you know, you reproduce who you are. And that just doesn't stop with you. That stops with every person you put into a position of leadership or authority in your church. Whatever they're carrying will be reproduced. So if you can't handle one of them, I promise you, you are going to have 20 of them. You're going to have 50 of them at scale. So learning how to look past their talent and gifting and look at their motives, look at their heart, their attitude, their maturity, all of those things point to this lie. Talent buys time for character to catch up. And the truth is, talent doesn't cover toxicity. You can't disciple rebellion out of somebody you gave power to early. You can't disciple that out. You can't just hopefully over time their character builds. No, you look for character and build talent. I can build talent. I can build skill, culture, and character. You cannot teach discipline. You can't teach motivations. You can't. Because why? That's an internal thing that person has to sift through with God and themselves. The lie that you're actually believing, this is something that, again, these are things that you and I have lived in our lives. Talent buys time for character to catch up. And the fact of that matter is it's not true. You have to be okay with not putting a title on somebody, not putting authority on somebody because their character is just not where it needs to be. Because again, that will be reproduced in your culture. Number 3, I don't have time to develop people. This one's a fun one. I've got a full week. I've got a full capacity. I just don't have time to develop people. What you're really thinking is slowing down to develop somebody feels like a luxury I can't afford right now. This is the lie. Urgency is more important than intentionality. And there is people that I've seen, I've led with, I've been friends with that just aren't great developers. And that's okay. You just have to be okay with acknowledging that. I'm not the best discipler. I'm not the best developer. I'm not the best reproducer. I'm not the best person who's going to be placed and I'm going to have 10 of these in 6 months. If you can just be honest, that's okay. The problem is, again, the lie is urgency is more important than intentionality, but intentionality is actually more important than urgency. Because if everything's urgent, nothing's urgent. So you have to be specific about what you're defining as urgent. The most important, the most urgent thing about being a leader in the church is people, continuing to develop people, encouraging people, to communicating with people, to meeting with people, to getting coffees, to getting dinners on double dates and sitting on FaceTime. That's what you signed up for. You didn't sign up for a platform. You didn't sign up for getting on a conference panel. All of that stuff is cool, but most of the time, the people who get those things, they are the people who actually, in the secret place, have been developing people and building people and continuing to do what they are called to do. So here's the truth. If you don't make time to develop leaders, you'll waste time cleaning up the mess from undeveloped ones. You got to slow down. You got to be intentional. Jesus, in the midst of a 3-year ministry, paused and corrected and spent time with his disciples. They did life together. There wasn't a Google Calendar meetup. And again, all that stuff's great. I use Google Calendar like a source of truth in my life. But at the end of the day, what Jesus did that I think you and I can learn from is integration. That there wasn't this 3-step class to get connected to a leader. He said he found somebody, he found them, and he said, follow me. And to me, that is the best principle of being a leader in 2025 and beyond, is being intentional about having eyes to see not 20 people, not trying to multiply yourself in the midst of unintentionality. Intentionality says, I see you, one person, and that person does the same thing for 2 people. And those 2 people do the same thing for 2 people. Now what you're doing is you're multiplying yourself, not through addition. Addition is, hey, let me get 10 people in a room, and hopefully if we hang out once a month and I give a leadership talk, they're going to be developed. They're not. Because they get developed when they see the real version of you. When you're in your home and you're just hanging out and you're watching sports and you're just being yourself, people want to see that version of you. You have time to develop people. It's just not a priority. Number 4, they're loyal, so I owe them a position. This is what you're really thinking. They've been around forever. Even if they're not great, I feel bad not promoting them. This is the lie. This is the actual root of that statement. Time served equals leadership readiness. That does not make sense at all. That is not a truth. That is people pleasing in nature, because if they've been around, that equals growth. I can hang around the Miami Heat's basketball practice all day. That doesn't mean that I'm going to become a starter. I'm not even going to make the bench. And that does not mean that they can't make a difference. That does not mean that they're not called by God and that God's called them to make a difference in their context. What I'm saying is you don't owe anybody anything. And that is the root of the majority of the problems that when I get on calls with pastors all over the world, they believe the lie that they owe somebody something. And what ends up happening is you feel like a bank account where God's called you to do something and he's given you X amount of people and you're figuring out, okay, I owe them this, I owe them this. They're tithing, so I owe them 4 coffees. They're showing up early, so I owe them. What you're doing is now you're a slave to the system that God called you to do. That does not make sense. He would never call you to do something that contradicts his word. He called you to plant a church. He called you to be a youth pastor. He called you to lead a connect group or a small group. Yes, and that does not mean that now you owe your whole congregation or your whole team your life. Jesus died for his church, so you don't have to. He said, love your spouse as I love my bride. So for me, I'm like, yes, my wife deserves me continually committing and sacrificing. But for people, again, the lie says time served equals leadership readiness. It's not true. The truth is, loyalty is a beautiful thing, but it doesn't require calling, skill, or fruit. Think about those three things: calling, skill, and fruit. Loyalty doesn't replace those things. Promoting based on guilt breeds entitlement, not leadership. You're just promoting because you feel bad. They've been around, they're showing up, they're being faithful, but yet there's no fruit. They're faithful, but there's no skill. They're faithful, but there's no calling. It doesn't make sense. Number 5, and lastly, and then we'll recap, I can't afford to offend them by telling them the truth. I just can't offend them. I can't upset them. I know that they're going to leave if I confront them. What you're really thinking, I know they're not leading well, but the fallout of correcting them would be worse than the current dysfunction. And again, that goes back to hoarding in the masses, hoping that their character will be developed. The lie in that, the root of that, is peacekeeping is better than pruning. And you know just as much as I do, that's not true. John 15, right? It's all about pruning. It's all about cutting off the dead branches. It's all about making it abundantly clear what we're about and what we're not. The lie, peacekeeping is better than pruning. The truth in this, the truth that I want to present to you or submit to you, avoiding hard conversations for the sake of comfort protects your insecurity, not. Here's the truth in all of this. Avoiding hard conversations for the sake of comfort protects your insecurity, not your team. Real leadership requires clarity, not dependency. Because again, the lie is peacekeeping is better than pruning. But the reality is, and I've said it multiple times in this episode, peacekeeping is not better than pruning. We should absolutely be striving for peace. And nobody wants to walk in on a Sunday or walk into a staff meeting and understanding that there's not peace. I always say, we can't have elephants in the room. If there's an elephant in the room, we just need to say it. But that's not even keeping peace. That's pruning, because that's all being accepting of that there's going to be moments of offense and there's going to be moments of confrontation. So the truth is, again, avoiding hard conversations for the sake of comfort protects your insecurity, not your team. Real leadership requires clarity, not codependency. You got to strive for clarity. Every meeting, every Slack message, every text message, every message you preach is all about clarity. Because clarity actually creates freedom for people to think and to create. Clarity is king when it comes to leadership, not codependence. I'm not codependent on anybody because God called me to do this. And if God called me to do it, that means he is my actual dependence. I'm dependent on God. I'm dependent on God to provide. I'm dependent on God to give me a new insight for our context and leadership in our church. I'm dependent on him, not people. And because again, I'm not submitted to being a slave for people. I'm submitted to authority. I'm submitted to God. And I'm submitted to our board, our team, my wife. Yes. And submission will always take you farther than ambition could ever dreamed of. I believe that to the core of my existence, but that does not mean that you're not going to have moments of offense. You will have a moment of being offended, and that's okay. The problem is staying there, because starting to be offended and staying offended real quickly turns into a spirit of offense, and that will be reproduced and multiplied in your church. So I'm just going to read these 5 lies and truths as we wrap up. The lie: function matters more than formation. The truth: using people to meet needs creates a volunteer culture, not a leadership culture. Eventually, it breaks both the people and the ministry. Number 2, the lie: Talent buys time for character to catch up. The truth, talent doesn't cover toxicity. Number 3, the lie. Urgency is more important than intentionality. The truth, if you don't make time to develop leaders, you'll waste time cleaning up the mess from underdeveloped ones. Number 4, the lie. Time served equals leadership readiness. The truth, loyalty is a beautiful thing, but it doesn't replace calling, skill, or fruit. Number 5, the lie. Peacekeeping is better than pruning. The truth, avoiding hard conversations for the sake of comfort protects your insecurity, not your team. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. We'll see you next week.